Well, hello there. My name is Dan Skipbound, and this is the 52 must-see movies and why they matter. And this evening, my guest host is Sandy, the Sandman Robinson. Sandy, how are you doing this evening?
Dan, I'm doing great. Thank you again for having me on. I was so happy with our last one, especially where like the historical significance of it at the time that we did that we did the recording. So I'm happy about that one. I am absolutely stoked to talk about this movie. So yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, when I asked you guys to nominate films, I'm hoping that you're going to nominate films that are really great films with great actors or great directors or great. And this one is right there in that this is an absolute great film, and I was glad that I saw that you nominated it so you and I can discuss it because it's. I mean, I'm a huge Paul Newman fan, and this is. I mean, this is probably in the top five. You could switch his filmography about if you want to do a top five of Paul Newman films. You could probably put any one of these in the top five, but Cool Hand Luke is usually in people's top two or three films of his filmography.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul Newman's one of my favorite movie stars. I love using that term when it's appropriate. Paul Newman was straight up movie star. That term doesn't gets used a lot sometimes inappropriately, just like superstar or anything like that. He was an absolute movie star, and I was a bigger fan of his earlier stuff than I was his later stuff. But you're absolutely right when it comes to him and his filmography. Everything he did knocked it out of the park.
He even played a Studebaker in Cars, and he was great as a Studebaker.
Right. Absolutely.
That's how you know someone's great when they can play an animated car and they're amazing, right?
And you know right away. You hear that first grumbling of his voice, and that's Paul Newman. You know right away. So yeah. No, absolutely, yeah.
So Cool Hand Luke. Let's talk about the cast. The two main stars in this film are Paul Newman as Cool Hand Luke and George Kennedy as Dragline. I'll tell you what, one of the best buddy. I mean, if you really think about it, this is kind of a buddy movie, even though what an amazing cast of characters. People like Strother Martin, Harry Dean Stanton. What do we have here? Joy Harmon, Morgan Woodward, Lou Antonio. I mean, I tell you what, when you're watching the movie, you're like, oh my God, that guy's in it. Oh my God, that guy's in it. Oh my
Dennis
God.
Hopper. Dennis Hopper's in it.
Dennis Hopper. I forgot. I did put Dennis Hopper down here. But you're right. Dennis Hopper. We're going to get to him in just a minute. We're not that far away from Dennis Hopper. But Dennis Hopper is in this movie. And it's directed by Stuart Rosenberg. It's talk about this cast a little bit. I mean, you can't move on to the plot and whatnot without I mean, what an interesting George Kennedy.
You're absolutely right. I look at this movie and I look at the cast of people, and you look at them, and it's hard for me not to look at another movie like The Outsiders, where you had this young cast of really what would become like great actors in their own right. And then you look at this, and you've got some established people that are there, like the George Kennedys, like you're telling, that have been around for a little while in the studios. But then you see Harry Dean Stanton when he was, you got to be in his like early 30s. You've got the Dennis Hoppers in like their early their ages, and and what they went on to do is so important, not just because of who they are, but what this was able to springboard them into in their careers. The cast was perfect. Like it was some of the best casting that you could do. You had some hard-nosed guys, you had some jokey guys, you had some straight guys, you had some, you had the fun, playful guys, the Joker guys, but you always had George Kennedy as Dragline. He was the law. There was the law outside, and then there was the law inside. And you're right about the buddy cop or the buddy movie, because it didn't start out that way. Paul Newman's character was cocky and he let his mouth yip a little bit, and Drag was like, nope, No way. And, and then we get to that iconic scene that I'm sure we'll talk about, in a little bit. But casting wise, it makes you want to go and look at more of their movies when you watch Cool Hand Luke.
Absolutely, yeah. But it reminds me of a movie like 12 Angry Men, where you have all these jurors, but all these guys turned out to be amazing character actors, and of course, Henry Fonda. And that's the same situation with Cool Hand Luke. You got all these great character actors, and you got the superstar Paul Newman, and of course, Strother Martin. We know him from another movie that him and Paul Newman were in together called The Hustler. So
I'm glad you brought up The Hustler, because it rolls into, I said earlier that I'm more of a fan of his earlier work, but my favorite Paul Newman movie of all time is The Color of Money. And that's a direct sequel to, spoilers, it came out in 87, folks. You know what? Get a grip. But it's a direct sequel to The Hustler. And we see, Paul Newman's character, but he's the movie star. He's the one that that does it. I mean, we forgot a couple of names, on there. One of the most important, because I'm a huge MASH fan, a MASH television fan. Wayne Rogers is in this one. He's taking the bets all the time, and so he's in it. So once again, the cast is just. It's phenomenal. And, we think about nowadays where the Avengers movies comes out and we have all these superstars in one movie. Well, guess what? They were doing that shit back then. They had all these people because they were all under contract to the studio. So you could put them in these big movies. You could do these big cast events where these massively famous people are now in this one movie. And are we better for it? I think so. We wouldn't have all of these movies that we're talking about on the 52 greatest movies. We wouldn't be talking about them if the casts weren't so good.
Yeah. If these weren't iconic movies, we wouldn't be discussing them. We wouldn't be nominating them. So let's get into the plot here. This movie gets off right off the bat. We don't mess around with this film. Paul Newman, Luke Jackson, you see him cutting off parking meters. He's drunk. He's got a beer in his hands. And wouldn't you know it, some cops roll up. What you doing, boy? Just cutting off parking meters. Hey, why don't you come along with us?
And like it was nothing. And that's it. Like it was nothing. Like, it's like, you know what? I'm just bored. And we see that, that same bored throughout the entire movie, which is, why the plot of the movie is exactly what it is. But yeah, just sitting there taking that stupid cutter and just cutting those things off and letting them hit and not even collecting the money. He's just doing it to be destructive. So yeah, and then the cops are just like, it's almost like that. It's almost like in Porky's, like the cops roll up on the kid that's running away naked down the street, and they're like, excuse me, would you mind pulling over? You're speeding, and he's naked as a jaybird. It's like these cops just pull him and go, yeah, hey, what you doing there? And he's honest about it. He's like, I'm just cutting the heads off these parking meters. All right, you're done.
And it's a town that doesn't have a lot of nightlife.
Not a lot of nightlife. Exactly.
Later to say the town doesn't have a lot of nightlife.
No.
So we end up in prison. We see him getting off the bus. He ends up in prison. He ends up getting a 2-year sentence. Road Prison number 36 is the name of the prison. And one of the things, they mention is, we don't want anybody here with rabbit in their legs. So we're going to put you in the box. The first night you're in the box. To remember, make sure you don't have any rabbit in your legs. That was the Strother Martin line there. I mean, he's got some interesting lines in the film. But then we get to meet some of our guys. We got guys like, we mentioned him before, Dennis Hopper, Babaluga. We got Babaluga. We get obviously Dragline George Kennedy. We got Tramp. That's Harry Dean Stanton, I believe. Coco, I think, is Lou Antonio. Those are a couple of our guys. Society, I can't remember who plays Society, but I know one of the guys is Society. They all have nicknames. Once you get there, you get your nickname. Of course, Luke doesn't have his nickname yet.
No.
But he's gonna get it. Well, we know the name of the movie, so I mean, it's not like it's a spoiler or anything. But so they end up eating their beans and cornbread. And we got Carl the Walking Boss. Carl the Walking Boss, he's in charge of the barracks. And he's got this whole, you got to wear it in a uniform. If you don't wear the uniform, you get a 9 in a box. Keep your spoon. If you lose your spoon, you get a 9 in a box. And he says all this stuff. Take your third sheet, and if you don't take your third sheet, you get a 9 in a box. He's got this whole spiel about all the stuff that the guys got to remember to do, or they get a 9 in a box. So Carl the Walking Box is another character in the movie. That's an interesting, cool character in the movie. That, like, this movie's filled with amazing just character actors. And I forget the guy that plays Carl the Walking Boss as well. But the cast goes on, and it doesn't stop. But then we got Gottfried the Walking Boss. Now he's got glasses and he's got a stick. This guy is a mean guy. I mean, you do not want to mess with Gottfried the Walking Boss.
Nope.
And okay, you got anything to say about anything I've already said?
Yeah, I'll touch on the walking, or the inside the barracks boss. I just love his. He barely has any lines in the movie. He's more of that presence. He's got that the cigar sticking out of his mouth kind of attitude. Like, all right, you don't do this, you got a net in a box. You don't do this, you got a net in a box. You do this, you got a net in a box. You don't do this, it's a box. Everything's a night in the box. And I love how it's. The prisons are different than nowadays. These are like working prisons. So, I mean, you work your butt off all day long from morning, from dawn until dark. And that was it. And so you had to know the rules, because if you broke them, a night in the box, and that box isn't nice. It's a tiny little, I would say it's a quarter of an outhouse about how big it is. So you don't want to go in that thing. So no, knowing all the rules up front, and then having people like Dragline and some of the older guys that have been there for a while, those guys in there to enforce it, to make sure that these new does he call them? New meat, or new meat. That the new meat knows, and that you're not gonna get away with this, because if you screw up bad enough, it's gonna come down on the rest of us. And we're allowed a certain amount of freedom, and we're allowed a certain amount of fun within the rules, which we find out about later. But that's what's good about that one boss in the barracks, is that during the bet, which we'll get to in a second, he lets these guys do it, and in a regular prison, that shit, it doesn't happen. So it's a different world when you get there, but it's one full of rules and regulations, but with some leeway if you play along. And that's that rabbit. We've got to break the rabbit out of you, because if you run, you screw it up for everybody. And so that's the point of, we're going to punish you right away, and then you'll know what's in store and won't want to do it.
And so then we get, like I said, there's supposed to be 50 guys. We got 49 guys and 1 in the box. And then we go out. These guys, what they do is they work on the road crew, where they clean the sides of the road. You didn't have weed whackers back then. You had these metal rods with a blade on the end of it, and it just would kill the weeds and stuff. And they dig out the ditches just so all the water can drain and the roads can stay normal. We didn't have the type of roads that we have today. A lot of our roads back then were dirt roads, and so you had to clean the sides of the roads, the ditches and stuff, because you didn't have equipment to do it. So they used prisoners to do it, and these guys were part, like I said, prison, road prison 36. But every once in a while, you have something that's an enjoyment, and in the case of these guys, we have. They're a bunch of men, 50 men in a prison plus a bunch of men guards. So we have no women around. Well, these guys got lucky one day, and they end up cleaning the side of the road, weed whacking, and when you know it, a hot blonde comes out in a short skirt, and she's washing her car, and these guys are drooling. They're having an absolute conniption. They cannot believe what their eyes are telling them. But this woman is amazing. Joy Harmon plays Lucille, dubbed Lucille.
Dubbed
She's
Lucille.
actually, in the script, she's the girl. But George Kennedy Dragline dubs her Lucille, Sweet Lucille.
Sweet Lucille. Yeah, no, that scene is so good because you got Harry Dean Stanton, quacking around afterwards when they go back and they're in the shower, and he's quacking around in the shower. He's trying to sing a song, trying to take whatever, visions he's got out of his mind, but you see them, they're all like taking them off, boss, and taking the glasses off, watering down, boss, watering down, putting them back on, boss, so they can all take little looks at this. And she's the whole time is like stealing little sideways looks over at them because she knows. And Paul Newman, that's what gets him in bad blood with Dragline right a bit, because he's all like, come on, she knows exactly what she's doing. You guys are all falling for it. Yeah, she's hot, but come on, she's messing with you. And then, Dragline just won't stop beating it into the ground when they get back. And that's when Paul Newman butts heads with them. And then they end up doing what they do in the next scene. But yeah, that scene is, she's the girl, but Dragline calls her Lucille. And I think that's how we all will know her for the rest of our lives, is Sweet Lucille.
Yeah, and like you said, Dragline and Luke get into it back at the barracks, and they end up in a fist fight, boxing match the next day. And this is where the viewer and the rest of the prison guys really get a lot of respect for Luke, because he's getting beat up pretty bad by Dragline, but he keeps getting back up. He doesn't stay down, and all the guys that stay down, that they just can't take it anymore. They start walking away. They're disgusted that he won't get down, and that's when Dragline really gets a lot of respect for Luke, and so do the rest of the guys in the barracks.
Yeah, it's such a great fight scene because, one, it's sanctioned. They're wearing gloves, so it's a legit. It's not like it's not like an MMA fight. It's not just bloody somebody until they're dead. You've got a beef. Here's some gloves. Go into the yard, beat each other up, and whoever wins the argument. And so they go out there. They do that. Yeah, I mean, Paul Newman, Luke is given what you figure 100 pounds and probably 6 inches of reach and probably a foot in height. To Dragline, and Dragline is just playing with him. And then he gets that one good shot in that pisses Dragline off, and Drag just punches him down. And then, yeah, you see what happens. He just keeps getting back up. There's no quit. I always think of that saying is that it's not the size of the dog that matters. It's the size of the fight in the dog that matters. Comes from that movie, because him just getting up and just keep getting punched down. I mean, they have that montage where he stands up, punch, stands up, punch, stands up, punch, like for like 6 or 7 punches. And then he finally just swings and grabs him, and Dragline picks him up and puts him over his shoulder and takes him in. And you're right. That is exactly when Luke became awesome in everybody's eyes. Dragline respected him. Everybody respected him. You knew you wouldn't go into a fight with him without, because he says it, to beat me, you're going to have to kill me.
Yeah.
And if you've got somebody against you on the other side that's that determined, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? You could sit there and keep beating him, but if he's going to keep getting back up, you're eventually going to kill him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then we get a card game. Luke gets his nickname because he does a nice bluff job on these guys. They all think he's got kings, and he's got squadouche. He's got nothing. And that's when Dragline gives him his name of Cool Hand Luke, because he's cool as a cucumber, because they had no idea that he had bubkiss.
Well, that's the funniest part, is that Dragline gives him the name, but it's actually Luke who says it without actually giving it, saying the whole thing. They go, he's got nothing. He fooled y'all. He had nothing. And he looks over, he goes, you had nothing. And he's like, yeah, you know what though? Sometimes nothing can be a real cool hand. And that's when he's like, and that's when he goes, that's right. Cool hand Luke. And that's exactly how he gets his name. And it's such a good scene because he's just like, kick a buck. See your buck, kick a buck. And it doesn't matter. He knows he's got shit. See your buck, kick a buck. See your buck, kick a buck. See your buck, kick a buck. And the guy's like, all right, go all in. And Dragline's playing him. He's like, come on, you got to go in. You can't let him. You got to see those cards. You got to see. All right, I can't take it anymore. Do whatever you want. And the guy's already in for all his money. And he's like, all right, I'll just go all in. And he's like, see your, and he can't go anymore. It's like, nah, I'm out. He's got the kings. He's whatever. So yeah, no, that's such a great scene because it gives us the name of the movie essentially. And, and once again, solidifies that friendship that we see between Dragline and now Cool Hand Luke.
Absolutely. That's another great scene that really shows us the bond of the characters. We didn't expect this to come, but his mother shows up. Every once in a while they get visitors. He didn't want his mother to know where he was. He asked her, how did you know where I was, Arletta? His mother's name is Arletta. She shows up in the car. And we got an iconic song in the movie. That's one thing, is there's some interesting music in the movie that adds some real depth to the movie. And he ends up getting a banjo, which we're going to need. You're gonna see that banjo later on in the film, but he gets a banjo. But his mother, he didn't want to be in trouble in his mother's eyes. Then we get to find out that he was actually in the military. His mother's the one who brings up the fact that he was in the military. He was like a 4-star. He was like a purple star or whatever. Purple Heart. He had all these accolades in the military.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, and I mean Jo Van Fleet, Jo Van Fleet, I think is her name. Yeah, Jo Van Fleet, and if you look up her filmography, she was in a ton of stuff and stuff that you would just recognize. She's a great actress, and how they handled that whole scene was so good. Like who gets to ride like that anymore? You get it like your bedroom, like sitting in the back of a vehicle, and your son's driving you around. It's like old school chauffeuring. But for her to come and for her to, Luke was the baby. You know what? So she had a special place in her, but her showing up was her saying goodbye, and that's all it was. Is that she knew she didn't have time left. She knew she was dying. And she was, and so she just had to once again come and say, I'm giving the farm to your brother. He's earned it, and you didn't need it, didn't want it, but I'm not going to be here when you get out. So, and to see that dynamic is like, he says to her, well, you know what, you did everything you could. None of this is your fault, and that's sort of how they leave it, right?
Yep. Then another key scene in the film was. One of the walk-in bosses. This is the one walk-in boss. I don't know his name. I can't remember in the cast what his name was. He said, you guys have been so good. We got a special treat for you. You get to tar the road. And this is it's being facetious. What he's basically saying is, you guys got to tar the road. And of course, Dragline's like, oh my God, this is brutal. And this road is like, it seems like it goes forever. But Luke figures a way around it, and they have to throw sand on the road. They put tar down. A tar truck comes down and sprays tar down on the road. But then they have to dig sand and fill up all the spots. And so Luke figures, well, if we do it fast, then we have nothing to do. So he convinces all the guys to go fast and do it quickly so they can take a break. And they end up getting like a 2-hour break because they finished tarring the road, and they're just sitting there, and the walking bosses and Godfrey and everybody have nothing else for them to do, so they get a break for a couple hours. So once again, he makes the guys think well of him in their eyes.
Well, not just that. It's once again, he's showing the guys that, you know what, you don't always have to take what you're being fed. You can, you can take your what you've been told and you can do it a different way and to benefit us. So if we just bust our asses, which we're going to do anyway, but if we bust our asses extra hard and follow that tar truck all the way down and chuck that sand all over the place, and we get done, what are they going to do? They're going to they're going to get upset because we worked too damn hard? No, they're going to say, okay, guys, well, we got nothing else for you, so have yourself a little bit of a break. And like you said, once again, just showing that little bit of, boys, we can do this and we can get away with this, and there's not a thing they can do about it, once again puts that air of Luke is just more, he's not just a dummy. Like, he's not just a convict. He's got ideas, and if we listen to this guy, then you know what? We'll think good things will happen to us.
Absolutely. One thing leads to another, and some bets are being thrown around, and Luke spits up, I can eat 50 eggs. And so we get a bet, and we get all the guys are getting, there's no way you can eat 50. And we have this whole working out montage of Luke working out with Dragline, trying to get his stomach stretched out so he could eat all these eggs. This is probably one of the best scenes in the whole movie, because you really think he's eating 50 eggs. And if you watch the special features, he doesn't eat 50 eggs. He might eat 12 or 13 eggs. But there was actually 200 eggs on set, and the whole crew ended up eating all the eggs.
Yeah. I would say that bet and the whole process around it right up until the end of it is not just one of the best scenes in this particular movie. It's one of the best scenes in cinema, where you take a guy who is already proven that he's cool as a cucumber, hence his name, and he throws out this monster number of, I'll eat 50 eggs. And you hear him, Drag says right after that, and he makes the bet, why'd you have to say 50? You could have said 20, or 25. And, and he's like, yeah, because, well, whatever, I'm bored. Once again, that boredom comes into, he's like, yeah, it's because it's not, I haven't done it yet. I've never done it. So, let's see if I can do it. He's always pushing himself to see if he can, push his boundaries, because he's bored with life. Like, I mean, you're right. He came out of the military. We can honestly say that being in the military, it's not boring. You know what I mean? So coming out of that and back to regular civilization, back to being a regular civilian, yeah, you're probably looking for things to keep your mind active, and doing 50 eggs in a bet. The best part about it isn't the eating the eggs. It's Dragline making fun of everybody. It's getting every single cent, and they're playing it. They're just playing it. And he's like, all right. And more money comes down. And then he's like, burr, and then starts eating more eggs, and the whole crew is just like, no way. And then that last egg, so he's just but the best part about that scene is the end, when his arms are out and he's laying on that table and his legs are crossed, and it looks exactly like what we would consider Jesus Christ. He's crossed, legs crossed, everything, and it's a very, very, very telling picture in that one scene of, now everybody in that whole camp looks at him like a deity, like a god, because he's done something that nobody thought could be done. He's done it again. He's done it again and done it again. Our respect for this guy is out of this world right now. So yeah, love that scene, love that bet, love the way it works, and it just, you did it, buddy. You did it. Just Dragline being that pal, being that, that one dude that you want for your entire life to be right by your side. That's the guy. So that scene works so well. that, yeah, it's and I'm glad they didn't beat it down, because they could have done the whole rest of the whole movie with him taking bets and him doing that, but that was it. It was just that one thing, and then we get into the rest of the movie.
Yeah, and you know, right after it, we see everybody trying to bum money off him because they're all broke. So he's giving out money at a percentage, so he's getting more money back. Yep. That's kind of a quick little thing that ends up happening as well. But one of the big kind of turning point of the movie is we already know that his mother's not going to live long. He gets a letter. She ends up dying. There's a song, of course. He plays a song on the banjo, and he's out walking. He's out talking to himself. He's walking in the rain. It's just, this is a really heartfelt. You really see the connection between him and his mother in this scene.
Yeah, and it's probably next to the other scene that we'll get to, you know, at the end of the movie. It's probably the most heart-tugging scene, the most emotional scene, because you can see it that he's trying not to let it affect him, but it still does, and I think that it changes what's going on in here. I honestly believe that he would have, you know, he would have done his 2 years. He would have put his time in if that hadn't happened. If he hadn't gotten that letter, we would be just watching a prison movie. But instead, we get what comes next.
Well, and Strother Martin, this is where we get a couple scenes with Strother Martin, Captain. I forgot to say that they call him Captain. And the other guys are all called Boss. Walking bosses are Boss, and the captain is Captain. So Strother Martin is Captain. He's like, usually when someone's mother dies, they want to get some rabbit in their legs. So what we're going to do is for 48 hours, we're going to put you in the box. So for 48 hours, he goes in the box. And then he gets out of the box. And he ends up getting he's getting like nothing's happening, like he's on the crew. And he's back out there taking a leak. Shaking it off, boss, shaking it off. See the bushes, the branches shaking it. And when you know it, he got his rabbit because he took off.
Yep.
He takes off. And of course, another great character actor. I can't think of the guy's name right now. But he's the dog boy. They call him Dog Boy in the movie. But he plays a lot of villains or like henchmen to villains in movies. The Dog Boy guy.
Anthony Zerbe.
Say that again?
Anthony Zerbe.
Yeah, this guy. If you watch movies in the 80s and the 70s, you've seen him everywhere. He's been a lot of TV shows too.
Mm-hmm.
So he's Dog Boy. The dogs go chasing after him. You see the dogs pulling him through barbed wire fences, through wood fences, and one of the dogs got loose and got ahead of him. And you see Luke like backtracking, going over the same fence back and forth, going one way over a bridge, then going back over the bridge the same way he came, and they'll under the water and all these different places to try to fool these dogs. But then you see one of the walking bosses and Dog Boy show up in a car back at Prison Camp 36. He gets out. He goes to the trunk. You think they captured Luke. You think they got Luke, but no. It's one of the dogs is dead. One of the dogs got killed by Luke somehow. They don't show Luke killing the dog, which is interesting. But I think maybe the dog just got caught in something, or got. I don't remember anything that could have killed the dog. So they show us the dog, but he's dead. And
it was all the running around that Luke did. Like he was running over in between fences, back and through fences. He was going through the river and going back over to the other side of the river. It was the railway tracks. It was going through the little town with the I can't remember if it was the first time he escaped or the second time where he met those kids and he was used their axe to cut the chains off. I think it's the next time. But during that first one, the dog just died of exhaustion because they were chasing him, and the dog, like, he's just, oh, Captain, he run poor Blue to death. He run poor Blue down to death. He killed him. And he's just sitting there with the limp dog in his hand. And it was just because he messed with them. He just was jumping and running everywhere, trying to shake the scent or at least get the dogs to get too tired to follow him. So yeah, so he didn't physically kill the dog, but he made it so that the dog killed itself because they just won't stop running, right?
Yeah. Okay. So Luke ends up getting caught. So if he gets away, the movie's over. We don't have a movie. So he gets caught. I don't know why I put this in here, but I have Carl reads a book. I think something about him reading a book has something to do with something. I don't know why I put it on there in my notes. And they're out walking again, working again, and one of the greatest quotes in movie history. Strother Martin comes up and he says, because he obviously knows what Luke was going through with the mothers dying and all that, and then he goes, "What we have here is a failure to communicate." And
by the way, one of AFI's top 100 quotes of all time in movies, and I believe it's in the top 25.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely, it is. I mean, and that's what Strother Martin is famous for. I mean, he's famous for these two movies, Cool Hand Luke and The Hustler. But that line, "What we have here
is a failure
to communicate," and it's just such an iconic line. You can use it in so many different contexts of work and whatever, with bosses of your own or whatever, people you're the boss and you're any sim. Of course, after all that,
back in the box.
Then he escapes again. I mean, it doesn't matter what the heck Strother Martin says. The captain says he escapes again. That's when you said you had the kids with the chains.
And then the cayenne pepper that he dumps all over the ground. So when the dogs come by, they sniff all that up and just go banana fest. And the little kids are just like, "Hey kids, you guys want to see something funny? Go inside and grab as much pepper and cayenne pepper as you can find." And they dump it all over the place. You can just see the kids are just waiting because they're just looking to laugh their butts off. So yeah, no, that's a great scene.
And then, of course, he ends up with a woman who helps him, but he ends up getting caught again.
Well, he sends that picture. Remember, he sends that picture to them. So, because he's gone for a longer period of time this time, and yeah, he ends up in the city, and he ends up, like meeting those two girls, and he gets that picture taken, and he sends it to the guys, and they're all like, once again, that God complex that the whole crew has for Luke now is. He's just even more so because there he is partying and he doesn't care. He sent a flipping picture of himself in the city, to the jail, for crying out loud. So I mean, like the balls on that guy are like that, right? So
yeah, no, you're right. He sends a picture and he hides it in a magazine because they check the mail and whatnot. Right. But it was in the back of the magazine where they didn't check. They checked the first few pages, but then. Like Dragline's looking through the magazine, what the heck is all this junk? And then all of a sudden they find the picture and come to find out later in the film that it was a fake picture. It was a set, like these two women, and he had somebody take a picture of him in front of like a advertisement or something like and so it looks like he's with two hot babes, but it's like two cardboard cutouts that he's in front of. So he kind of tricks him again.
Which once again is part of Luke's charm, right? Is that not only is he cool, but it's all fabricated. Like he's not really that cool. He's not really that worldly. He doesn't have all that stuff, and we find that out, as we get further into the movie that you guys think of me this way, but I'm not that way.
Yeah. But after this time he gets caught, he ends up, this is really what could really break him. He thinks, okay, he's got a day and a half off and he's going to take a break and he's going to get some rest after working. But the one walking boss has said, hey, this is Captain's yard. Why is all this dirt doing in Captain's yard? Get this dirt out of Captain's yard. So he ends up having to dig a giant ditch. And then one of the other bosses comes up. He says, hey, what's all this dirt doing over here?
Nope.
Dirt's in the way. This dirt's in my way. What's all this dirt? So he puts all the dirt back in the ditch. Then the guy comes back and says, hey, didn't I tell you to get this dirt out of Captain's yard? And so he did.
Over and over.
Then eventually Captain comes out and he talks to him and he's, boss, I promise. No more. You got me. I understand. Please give me a break. Give me a break. And he goes and he sleeps and they think he's done with. They think he's done with that. He's not gonna run away anymore. He doesn't have any rabbit in his legs anymore. But so they take him back out to work, and Godfrey's like, go get the guy some water. So he goes to the truck, gets the water, brings the water, starts feeding guys water. Then he says, go to the other truck and get the rifle because he's going to kill a turtle. Earlier in the movie, he kills a bird. This time, Godfrey kills a turtle. This guy's got a pretty good aim for a guy that, we don't know if he's blind, but I don't think he's blind. He's always got the sunglasses on, so he's not blind. But while he's getting the rifle and getting the water, he took the keys out of the trucks. But we don't know that yet. We just know that he took the keys out of the trucks because he ends up taking one of the trucks and start taking off. And wouldn't you know it, this time, Dragline jumps on the truck with him and they take off. And the next scene, we see him hiding the truck in the bushes and they're trying to get the chains off of their legs and whatnot. But they break up. Dragline goes one way, Luke goes another way, and Luke goes into this barn or this church. And Dragline, you see Dragline come along running, and he comes into the church. Luke, they got me. They're right here. You can see Luke looks out in this cop's cars. There's all the guys from the prison, all the bosses and the captain from the prison. He's praying. He's praying in the prison. Please give me an answer. What should I do? What's going to happen next? And then he says, I guess this is your answer. And that's when he knew what he had to do, what Luke had to do at that moment. And he looks out the window, and when you know it, Godfrey, right between the eyes, right in the head. Talk about this last escape in this scene.
Well, I think you said the three words that are the most important. This last escape. And I think it means more than just him escaping jail. I think that this was Luke's intention all along, that they were eventually going to get pissed off enough and that it would be shoot to kill. Like you can't train a wild animal to stay domesticated. Eventually it'll be wild and it'll take your head off. So what choice do they have with Luke, and what choice does Luke have? He's already added probably 9,000 years onto his sentence with trying to escape 50,000 times. So he's in jail for probably a good portion of the rest of his life. He's definitely not a caged animal. We've seen that. He can't survive in a caged environment. And the last act of true friendship sacrifice is he knows that if he gives himself over, that they're not going to go so hard on Dragline. That if he gets either killed or surrendered or taken away, that's who they want. They want Luke because Luke is the problem. Dragline never gave him a problem before Luke came around. Luke was the problem. So if he could sacrifice himself, he's also saving his friend Dragline. And that's what we find out eventually happens, is that when they shoot him, almost nothing happens to Dragline. So I think that it was not just a final act, but it was a heroic final act on the part of Luke. But I also thought that, you know, you've got the boss who shoots him, and we saw twice that he was good with his gun, and you didn't want to mess with him. So when it came right down to it, it's like sending in the SWAT team. You sent out your best guy with the best shot, and all you had to do was, and you were done. And that's how quick it took. And I think that's and then you get that and you know, old time Hollywood music, and then the credits run, and you know that for the rest of the time that prison exists, the story of Cool Hand Luke is going to get sent down to new person to new person to new person. So that story continues forever and ever and ever, regardless of how many prisoners leave, are released, die, whatever. Luke will always be remembered. Once again, we're getting to that deity, that godlike status of now he'll never be forgotten throughout all of time. It'll just continue to be a story that gets told on and on and on. And in all honesty, as much as I'm a fan of the happy ending, I don't think that movie could have ended any other way. It had to end with Luke being as defiant as he had been the whole movie, and it costing him his life. Spoilers if you haven't seen it, sorry. But that ultimate sacrifice for his friend is what I will always remember from that movie, is that he had a choice. He could have jetted out the back and left Dragline to hang, but he didn't. He gave them exactly what they wanted and saved his buddy. And that's one of the main reasons why it's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, that's you hit the nail on the head there. It's just, and I just one of the themes in the movie is, you know, coming back to, like you said, the guy that shoots him in the head, the Godfrey the walking boss. Yep. He had shot a bird. He had shot a turtle. So they're having these things set up throughout the movie, setups, and these setups really come back in the movie. You know, when Arletta gives him the banjo, and then later on he plays the song. Paul Newman didn't know how to sing. He didn't know how to play a banjo. He was taught while making the movie how to play a banjo and how to sing this song, just so it would come out right, and it came out great. You know, yep. Things like that came back in the film that Stuart Rosenberg really brought the script out, and the script writers, Pierce, I believe the guy's name is Pierce that wrote the script. I think that's his name, Pierce. I forget the author. I thought I had the author in my notes, but
writing credits are Don Pierce and Frank Pearson. And the novel that it's based on is from Don Pierce. So yeah.
So those guys really, the novel had a lot going for it, but then the scriptwriter really brought a few of these little different things to the script to really make it and stand out, that extra, you know. Yeah. And that's why Cool Hand Luke is such an essential film. And I was glad you nominated it, Sandy. When I saw it on there, I was like, all right, good. I can't wait to talk about this with Sandy, because it's, I mean, like you said, I'm a big Paul Newman fan. He's easily one of my top 10 favorite actors, and he's just so amazing. He has that thing that you just love about him, is that underdog feeling, that kind of character, or whether he plays a lawyer, or whether he plays a pool player, or whether he plays a prisoner, or whether he plays a cowboy. What you just have that kind of, you just care about him when you see him in a role.
Well, yeah, and think about you know, one of his other movies, which I know is part of your it's either first season or this season, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Think about him. Think about his earliest career. He played the underdog. He was the guy that first you had to realize why you liked him, and then once you liked him, you rooted for him. And no matter what he did, no matter, you know what, he was in jail for a reason, so he was a criminal, but we still rooted for him because it was him against the world. It was him against everybody else, and you just wanted to cheer for him. Just like you did in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, just like you did in, you know, in some of his other work that you mentioned, The Hustler. You know, he was the underdog. You know, he was you know, you wanted him to beat Fats. You wanted him to, you know, to be as dominant as you wanted him to be. You didn't have any idea that Fats was playing him that whole time, and that was what was so beautiful about it. You know, rope-a-dope is such a great word in a lot of Paul Newman's movies. Is that people, you know, you think he's winning, you think he's getting there, and then all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out, and you're just like, oh, and then you feel for him again, and that's what makes Paul Newman such. I would say, you know what, Paul Newman's filmography is probably one of the most important filmographies to watch from start to finish, because it just is fantastic. There's nary a bad movie in his entire group. But Cool Hand Luke, I nominated because I think it's essential watching. I think that you cannot call yourself a movie fan if you do not watch this movie, just because it's so good. The characters, like you said, we said at the beginning, the characters, the story, like the music, the directing, the cinematography, everything about the movie is just, the editing, everything about it is so good. Like those faraway shots, and then all of a sudden zoom into those shots. Just the camera work is just, it's so classic for that time period, but so ahead of its time as well. It's just such a fantastic movie that you want to, you know, you want to watch it over and over and over again because you miss stuff. And I mean, I know you're a big fan of the Criterion series of movies. I'm not sure if this one has a Criterion for it, but if it does, or if it ever will, it'll probably be one of the ones that I go out and buy.
It's on Warner Brothers. They have a special 100 anniversary box set of Warner Brothers films.
Nice.
And I believe Cool Hand Luke is in there. So that is an amazingly expensive 100 movies. So,
yeah, no shit, right?
It comes in a giant trunk. But
well,
yeah.
It should.
But yeah, so I'm just glad you nominated it, Sandy. I was glad we had a chance to talk about it, and I'm glad we had a chance to talk about another great film on the 52 must-see movies and why they matter. Where can you be found, my friend?
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate you having me on again. You know, I love talking movies with you. So anytime I can be on with you is a pleasure of mine. You can always find me Full Metal Media Live, Full Metal Trivia on Facebook and YouTube, Worldwide Movie Games on YouTube and on Facebook. And starting up soon, the Full Metal Geek, and there will be Geek Trivia Leagues. Sign up if you haven't already. Shoot me a message on Messenger or on Facebook, and I'll get back to you.
And you can find me at Dan Skip Allen on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest, or at From the Fourth Row. Also, if you want to read my written reviews of movies, you can find them at cinesportstalk.com. That's cinesportstalk.com. Cinesportstalk.com. So for Sandy and myself, good evening. Good night.